Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
awesome. Okay, yay! All right, so here's what we'll be covering today. Our record usage stats tool, that is the basic stats search form that both our volunteer software and our community information software has when you click the statistics link from the main menu. And our auto reports, which are also available from that statistics link from our main menu. And finally, we'll be covering the web stats tool, which is a completely external tool. The web stats tool actually monitors our web server logs and captures more than just record views. It captures any kind of traffic that you get to the site, including every kind of different file. It also does some further analysis on the kind of traffic we're getting, where it's coming from, and so on. But what it doesn't tell us is things like what user was doing it, what viewer they logged into, and all of those things that we get out of our built-in statistical tool. So that's why we end up with two tools, is they actually perform different functions. And we'll start with a little reminder about what our built-in stats tools do, our record usage. So I'm going to show you my browser window in a moment. And hopefully it's of a size that everyone can cope with. I'm going to actually show Hamilton. I know they won't mind, and I need someone that has real stats. Okay. Show my, here you go. All right, so this is our basic searchable stats tool that we have. All of the record view statistics that occur when someone views a specific record in our software that's how we build this particular set of statistics. The things that we record are, I have an actual, Chris has a slide on this. We record, I have to switch, here we go. We record the record number, whether that be the organization or program record in our CIC software or the opportunity ID in the volunteer software, the date and time that it was requested, the IP address of the person who makes the request, the language in which the record was accessed, the user ID if the user was logged in, the view that they were looking at the record in, and if we know it to be a search engine robot or crawler, then we also capture what type of robot or crawler it was. So this is what we store in a database table within the software. So if you ever download your stats database, this is what you would see, are these particular elements. Chris, I believe, wants to take over now?
Yeah, I haven't been promoted.
Okay. Laura, can you make Chris the presenter again, please? There we go.
Okay. So, did you cover redisplay? Which?
No, I didn't.
So, record access is for every record access, so that's the details page view. We store that information, except if we're redisplaying that view in a different format, such as when temporarily changing views or on the record details page. Such as temporarily changing views.
When you're viewing
view change it?
No. So when you're viewing a single record, you've done a search, you've brought up your record, there are several ways you can change the display of that record, switching to public view, clicking on print version. These are various ways of redisplaying the same record, but because that really doesn't mean a second view of the record, it's simply a redisplay at the same time, we don't double count that. So if I am viewing a record and then I click print version, it's not going to count that print version as a second view of the same record. It's only going to count the first time that I looked at that record.
So the built-in statistics tools use this information to provide the report summaries, and all statistics are provided in aggregate form. This means that there is no tool that allows you to look at the individual requests that occur. There's two classes of people that can view statistics. Super users who can view the statistics on all records in the database. And there are other users with the can view statistics permission, which is set up in the user types. They can only view statistics on record views that happened in the current view. In addition, record views may be filtered by the following criteria: the IP address or the beginning of the IP address, a specific user type if the user was logged in, the view in which the record access occurred, the date range in which the record access occurred, the owner of the record, who viewed it, either anyone logged in or public only, whether the record was viewed in English or French, and this allows you to do your show your statistics in in a new window in the print version. And if you run the statistics, you can see that we have the record number. This is for CIC, but it's equivalent in vol. We are ordered by the usage, and this one has high usage because that is our test record for testing to make sure the database is up. If you're wondering why that has such high versus other ones, but we can go directly to the record in question if we want to, and it gives the total at the end. There are two similar record use statistical views that do not allow you to use criteria. That's the total record use, which shows all the records in the database and the use that they have. This is in alphabetical order by the organization name. It's by organization name in both the vol and the CIC, and it provides a breakdown between public views versus all views. And there's a total at the bottom. Top 50 does the same thing. It provides the top 50 records in your database with a similar breakdown based on the public usage and the total. And these two have the same rank here. There's a rank 2-2. They're both the same because the total usage is the same between those two records. Okay. In addition, if you're doing a report that you're doing criteria on, if you do a search in either the CIC or the vol, and you have the checklist option on, you check some and do export records. Sorry, wrong section. Generate stats report. There we go. You can put in some extra criteria. So you've already limited to a specific set of records that you're interested in. You could further limit it based on the kinds of views that you would like to create a report on, and you can do a search. Okay, so that is all of our criteria-based searching tools. Oh, and the use by agency, right? So there's also this other record use one at the top here that is the use by agency. So this shows the record owner total records usage by the public and the total usage. So you can see that what their usage is against the number of records that record owner actually has. So we also have auto reports. We also have the auto reports, which are built into the software, and we actually have the volunteer module in this database. So I'll just show you that these are the same in CIC and vol. We have the same form, record use, top 50 used by agency, And then both of them have this auto report, which are the same between CIC and Vault. And there are 3 classes of these reports. There's the data management, there's more record view reports, and there's the unique IP reports. So all of these reports are limited to the past 3 months of activity, and all of these reports are grouped by the month in which they occurred. So as you can see, in the data use report, we have the past 3 months, and we also have the activity in each of those months. The data management report allows you to see which of the created, last modified, taxonomy modification date, full update, and deletion date were set in a particular month and in a particular language, if that applies. And in this report in particular, the older the information is, the less likely that the information is accurate. This is because the information is overwritten when you do a more recent update.
That's particularly true for modified. So created, I mean, every record has one created date. It never changes. So your created is very reliable over time. Your last full update is also relatively reliable across the entire report because you don't tend to do more than one full update in a 3-month period. Likewise, deletion date is a relatively reliable tool because it doesn't tend, unless you permanently delete your records frequently, it doesn't tend to be a changeable date. So those are relatively reliable. But our last modified, at least drawing on what we draw on today, is less reliable because we only are using the last modified date in the record, and every time you touch that record, that last modified date changes. One of the things that, so we know that's an issue, and that's part of the reason why we only give you 3 months worth of stats on this. One of the things that we want to look at is now that we have other types of information available in the database, how can we make this particular report more reliable? Because we have other places to draw on to know about all of the modification history that has occurred in the past now that we have a change history tool. So one of the things that we'll look at is how we could leverage that new tool to make this report more effective and accurate over time. My questions window closed. Awesome. Never mind.
All right. So, also in the auto reports, we have the 2 record views, which are by record owner. And again, these are broken down by month. So it's very similar to the use by agency, except the use by agency does not operate, does not break things down by month. Use in a particular month, again, very similar to the other reports that we have, but the other reports are not broken down by month. And we also have the unique IP reports. Now, a note about unique IPs is that they give a general sense of the number of visitors you have to your site, but one person may be using multiple IPs, or multiple people may be using one IP.
And I'm going to flag this particularly for our Central East member on the call, that in that particular database, and we have one other of our members who is in the same situation, if you have an external site that is an interface between the user and the CIOC hosted site, that all comes in as a single IP. So any of the potentially hundreds or thousands, or in some of our members' cases, millions of different accesses that are happening from that site all appear to come from one IP address. And so for those of our members who are in that situation, it's important to be aware that unique IP reports for you are likely to be very inaccurate.
So the most basic of the unique IP reports only reports the number of unique IP addresses by month. But we can also add which views were accessed into the mix or the record owner. So that is the extent of the stats that exist in the online resources software. Are we going to have discussion now about the possible changes, or are we going to just...
I'd like to, I think what we'll do is just quickly give you an outline of the web tool as well, and then I'd really like to open up some discussion about, we have very little on our wish list for this session, so I'd really like to open up discussion from everyone about what kind of statistics you need to be keeping or would like to be keeping, and how the reporting can be improved in order to get you what you need.
So the web statistics tool, which is this one right here, it's called AW Stats. That's a piece of software that we're using, that's an available piece of software. It provides statistics based on information that is logged by the web server. So the other stuff is logged by the CIOC application, and this is logged by the web server. And there's a certain number of things that are available for the web server to log, and we log just about everything that the web server lets us log. So that means we log the target domain name of the request. So was it hamilton.ciyoc.ca or www.hamilton.inform.hamilton.ca? I think that's the right address.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The remote, or the end user's IP address, the time and date of the request, whether the request was, say, a form post or just a regular get, the URL, so that's what they were actually trying to access, and what version of HTTP they were using.
So most of that is of no consequence to anyone but us. That's stuff that Chris and I have to monitor, and not of terrible relevance to you.
The URL is important, the version
So
is not. Okay. The status of the response. Did they get success, an error? Was it a link that was pointing to a missing file? That kind of thing.
So to explain those and why they're relevant, Chris and I do some monitoring of that information, because that's part of what lets us know that all of your sites are running successfully, that people are finding the files they're looking for, that we don't have broken links in the software, that there aren't errors being generated out of the software. That information gives us an overall way to monitor your sites and ensure that they're doing what they need to do. But it's actually a really important monitoring tool for you that many people are unaware of, because if you have broken links in your site that you've created in your records, or broken links that other people have into your site, these statistics are going to tell you that. So it actually really provides some very useful information, not just to Chris and I, but also to you if you take the time to go through this tool and evaluate what it is that people aren't finding. In this example, someone has set up looking for graphics on their CIOC site that obviously should be on an external site. That means they've linked to those graphics incorrectly, say from their design template or some other place. And by looking in their logs, they could discover that they actually need to go in and make modifications to their templates or records or whatever the case may be to be properly referencing those files.
How much data was sent and received, we record. The URL of the page that linked to the request. This is called the refer. And this is really important because it lets us know, for instance, that people are coming from Google and what they were searching for when they came from Google.
Unfortunately, we do know that some people have antivirus software, proxies, etc., that block that information from us. So we can't get that information from everyone who browses your site, but we can get it from a significant proportion of people, and we can do something with the information when we have it.
We also get the query parameters. So when you do a search on the CIOC site, all of the search terms that you use and all of the search criteria goes into the query parameters. So if I do a search, all of this stuff here is the criteria that I provided on the front search form there. Now, this isn't really usable by a person, but because this is going to be handled by machines, we can potentially pull some information out of there that would provide useful statistics. The user agent lets us know a little bit about who's using the software. It'll identify what kind of browser they're using, what operating system they're using, the versions of those. This allows us to more closely target what browsers we're going to direct development of the software towards. And the overall time taken to server requests. So we could potentially tease out of that some information about if we have issues with responding to requests in a timely manner.
So it tells us if we have any issues with our performance or pages that are taking too long to load. That lets us know.
So the AW Stats tool provides for us, without really any additional work, some basic information. So as you can see across the top here, we can see unique visitors, and this is based on the IP address of those visitors. So it comes with the same caveats that we provided with the unique IPs for the tracking that's done directly in the CIOC software. The number of visits, and this is based on what's known as a heuristic, which is an educated guess based on measuring the time between requests from a particular IP. And based on that information, it can say how many requests per visitor, visits per visit we get.
In that month. So right now we're looking at a single month, which is December 2010. So that wouldn't be the number of visits per visitor, ever. That's how many times they're visiting you this month.
The pages that were viewed, in this case this month, and how many pages they went to per visit. Kits is separated from pages in that it is pages plus all of the extra things that make the pages work, like the style sheets and the images that are displayed that are hosted by CIOC. And the bandwidth gives us an idea of how much traffic we're using. One of the things that we see with this information is this number here is a good guess at how many of the page views are actually seen by a person, as opposed to this number, which is the number of page views that are seen by a machine. For instance, the Google bot that goes in and provides checks for the changes to the pages so that they know how to provide links and searches to your site.
And some of you may be very surprised at how much higher the number of not viewed pages is compared to the number of viewed pages. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is the number of different crawlers who visit the site, and one is that they visit every single page as opposed to a human being who's going to access very specific records and pages according to their needs. And we do know that a huge proportion of that is Google. We are at an advantage with CIOC that Google loves us and ranks almost all of our members extremely highly in all of their results. But we pay for that in that Google then crawls us frequently as a provider of frequently updated information. Google can tell how often we're making changes to the site, and because we are detected as a sort of good quantity and frequently changing sites, they visit us a lot, very, very frequently, even within a given month. So that means they're visiting every single record in your database that they can access in every way they can access it, and they're doing that multiple times a month. So that's why we end up having to make some kind of a distinguishment between what are people looking at and what are these search engines looking at, so that you really understand what is real traffic that I'm getting and get a more meaningful number out of it.
Okay, so those are the basics, and we can see a monthly chart across here. I've just switched into November, so you can see for a full, the data that's provided for a full month, as opposed to we only have a partial month in December, which is what we were on before. So we have a little bit of a graph and some charting of that information. It can show, the software showing trends based on day of week. You can see that, day of the month. So you can see sort of a dip for a couple of days. Those are the weekends. So we have an up and down as part of the week. We can see that by days of the week, we have a specific trend. Hour of the day, the business hours, we have more traffic. And then, based on the IP address, we can infer things about where the people are. So, how much of our traffic is coming from Canada? Well, the vast majority of it is coming from Canada, which is good because that is our target audience. We have some weird ones in here. Quite often when you see Ivory Coast or something like that, that's spam harvesters, and we try to actively block these guys, the Nigerians and the Ivory Coast and that sort of thing. This, of course, is traffic for all of the CIOC hosted sites. So we can see some of our more active members showing up at the top. These are going to be the staff of some of our more active members that are represented here by the country and the city. So the IP address can get us fairly specific in that regard. It knows when robots or spiders visit. In particular, we're interested in Yahoo and Google. The MSN bot is the live search engine. So there's a number of top bots here.
Nagios is us.
Nagios is our own monitoring software. The duration of the visits. So what this is telling us here, 0 to 30 seconds, 72% of your visits are probably coming from a Google visit, and they're hitting one page, and that's the end. They're getting the information they need. So it shows the 0 to 30 seconds because they only have one hit.
Right. So what's happening is they do a search in Google, it comes up with a record, they look at that record, and they're done.
Okay. Here we have some information based on the URLs. So these are the top URLs that people visit. So across all of the sites, the top viewed pages individually are, not surprisingly, the basic search page, which is going to be Flash, and the basic search results page, because people who are doing searches on the site are going to go there, so that's a very common place for them to go, as opposed to any particular individual record.
So one thing to keep in mind here is that each of our records details pages, meaning for every record, it's considered its own page. So it would come up independently in the list. Can you click on full list? Actually, that would probably be too many.
You know what? I'll do it in the background, and we'll see what we come up with.
Okay. For those of you who are looking at your own stats instead of what we're looking at now, which is everybody's stats compiled together, you could look at your full list to see which records are being hit that way, and it's just another way of getting that information out. So
when we move further down in the list, we can find Flash record /BTN 2271 has had 2871 views in the month. So that's a fairly popular record. And if you were looking at your own statistics, you could click on that link there, and it would take you in to that particular record if you wanted to know, if you didn't know off the top of your head which record that was. Because we're looking at everyone's, it doesn't associate the domain name of your individual CIOC memberships, so it can't take us there directly. So we have some operating systems. Not surprisingly, Windows is 90%. Browsers, we're actually pretty consistent with in our browser share with the rest of the internet. If you check our browser share with the rest of the internet, but it's interesting to note that we are almost up at 1% in mobile use. So there's the BlackBerry right there, and there's two more phone-based browsers, and we have the big browsers up here. Where people are coming from, so it separates out search engines because it knows that a lot of traffic is going to be coming from search engines. So here we have this direct address is based on there being no referrer information. So that is either that they've gone directly to the site, or because they're getting a link out of email or something, or they knew which site to go to, or that kind of thing. Here's the requests that come from the various search engines, other external links, keywords, key phrases from search engines, keywords from search engines, status codes is what the result was, and here we have, so once we get into here, these are stats that we have programmed as part of the system. So we can provide configuration that says, let's create a new box for ourselves. So the domain aliases, this is our own stat. The search phrases, this is our own generated stat. So these are our own search phrases.
So that's people typing into your basic search form or your advanced search form, not search phrases that they've entered in Google or Yahoo or anywhere else.
And then I've broken out, so here we have the specific, we have search phrases done across all search engines. And down here we have it broken down per search engine, what people were searching for in each of those search engines.
A lot of that, unfortunately, is going to have gobbledygook, and that's because of people, or not people, in fact, doing certain kinds of nefarious activity. So it should be relatively obvious to you when you're looking at...
These are all non-real.
Right, when you're looking at information that isn't from a human being.
It's less gamed in the Yahoo and the MSN. And that's the existing stats. So, I want to finish up talking to give you guys a chance to talk, but some of the things that have come up, either they're already in the features database, or members have talked to us of wanting these. And before we do that, based on the online resources changes, I want to make a note that we want to avoid the need to store extra information. Anything more will provide a performance burden. Any extra information that we store provides a performance burden on the system. So,
I'm going to clarify that in an easier way. At one point, for instance, we added some extra information to our statistics table about the browser that people were accessing with. That caused our databases to get so large that we almost filled the entire hard drive of our past server. And the reality is that right now, most people's databases, especially our high-traffic sites, 80% plus of the size of their database is already a result of their statistics. So because of that, we really need to focus on getting more information out of what we already keep and already have track of, either in our web logs or in our record use tables. But we're really limited on our ability to track anything more than what we already track, just because we don't have the performance and space capability to be storing more information than what we already store. So we really want to focus on doing better reporting, making better use of the information that we do keep.
Okay, so be more clear about what's included in the displayed statistics. So this could mean an indication of what records were included. Was it all? Was it the ones in your view? Was it the ones that you selected in your quick list?
So right now, we know that a super user sees every record in the database. We know that anyone else sees just the view that they're looking at, but they're not being told that when they're looking at the stats. We're not giving enough information to the user about what there is being reported on, what they're looking at exactly.
We want to be able to, we could potentially also display the search criteria just in the same way that we display the search criteria used when we do a standard CIOC search.
So that, by search criteria, we mean if you're creating a statistical report, it would tell you what your parameters were for that statistical report. We don't mean we're going to report on searches. We mean we're going to report on your search of the statistics and tell you what it was. Like I searched for statistics for May 1st through June 31st or 30th. So that's what we mean by search criteria.
So one of the feature enhancements in the feature database is to report on stats by taxonomy term. I'm putting in a note that we might need to select the terms to group by. I mean, there's a lot of terms. And my question is, and if you guys think that this is something that you want to work on, we need to identify things like how are two taxonomy terms that are being showed statistics for one record view counted in the stats that are output.
Right. I'm gonna clarify that again. So let's say I have a record that is indexed to two different taxonomy terms, and I decide I'm going to start creating a report that says, for anything that falls under this branch of the taxonomy, tell me how many record views I have. For anything that falls under this branch of the taxonomy, how many record views did I have? Well, in some cases, you'll have a single record that is going to occur under more than one of those branches. So it'll be important to be clear and not in any way misleading that those statistics can have repetition, because one record can belong to more than one part of the taxonomy. Part of the issue here is that in the U.S., they subdivide services up to a degree that nearly every service that they're referring on only has one type of index associated with it. It's that refined, whereas records in our members databases tend to have a wide variety of taxonomy terms associated with them because they tend to represent a broader level of services under a single record. So we can't expect the same kind of reporting that they do because we don't keep our information in the same way.
In the client tracker, we do configurable grouping and configurable totaling, and we could potentially do something like that. In particular, you might want to make the option of the grouping by month be an option in your search, and then potentially some of the auto stats would go away.
So let's take a second and maybe can we bring up some client tracker reports? So our client tracker software has more sophisticated statistical reporting tools than what we have available in our online resource software. So I think having a little look at what those reports look like would be helpful.
So reports, and if I do a request summary, this is one of the more simple ones. So part of the configuration of this, I can group by the agency, the user, or the month, or any combination thereof. So if I check them all and I generate a thing,
okay. Oh, look who you're picking.
Oh, you know.
Try picking someone that actually has an account.
Does someone want to volunteer?
Anita, can we use Hamilton's data?
There's a hand up. Right? Someone's got a hand up. Okay. So what's the thing?
I just wanted to say yes.
Good. All right. If you type in the questions box, I'm monitoring the questions box.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Bring Hamilton here.
Yes. Community should be under. Where are they? Inform Hamilton. Go down.
Okay. There they are. Right. Okay. Sure. All right.
Yeah. All so right. Just there you go. That should actually have data in it.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. Helps to pick someone who actually has some data.
We've grouped here by month, by agency. Here we have 2 agencies in 1 month. And then again by the user that took the call. So we have multiple levels of grouping there. And the other thing that we can do is we can do, I can ask to have final totals. And when we get down to the bottom, wow, there's a
yeah, date range.
No date range. So there's like.
Okay. Well, let's. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. There we go. There's total. Yay. And there's the option to have subtotals at each of these levels as well. So I mean, there's more options for reporting from a criteria.
So the bottom line here is we have some auto reports right now that do some of these groupings, but it doesn't go along with our search form that allows you to pick criteria. So either letting you do grouping, which is predefined, but only for 3 months and with no criteria, or we're letting you do a search but not letting you do any kind of grouping or subtotaling or anything like that. So can we add some of the features of both of those things, allowing you to choose criteria and also subdivide and otherwise group and total your statistics.
Okay. Exporting statistics into a usable format such as CSV or XML. And
by this we mean your reports, because right now you can already download all of your raw statistics from the record view. So what we're talking about is not downloading your raw access statistics, but rather the report data, so that you can bring that into Excel or some other program in order to do something else with it.
And there's also the possibility in the online resources software to do statistics from the field history. So, and my question there is, what do you want to know based on the information that we have in your field history?
Right. So let's take a minute. Yeah, let's take a minute to explain what's in your field history table. So for anyone who's unclear, we keep a change history on about 95% of the fields in your database. What that means is every time anyone makes any kind of change to that field, whether that be through a bulk tool, the update form, etc., we record what change was made, who made it, when they made it. So that allows us to have an ongoing history of exactly when each kind of modification was made. So instead of when was that record last modified, we can start telling you every single modification was made, how often modifications are made to given records, like how many records get modified more than 10 times per month, how many records get modified less than 2 times per year. These are the types of statistics that we would be able to provide to you based on information that we're already keeping. At this point, to give you an idea of the wealth of information, some of our databases have over 1 million entries in their history table. We have really extensive, detailed information. So it's just a matter of finding out what kind of information would be useful for you to get out of that, and how would you like it to be presented to you, and who should have access to it too, which is always an issue with statistics, is who do you want sharing this information. So that's another thing that comes into play.
Okay. So in external tools, which could be the web stats or other possible things we could do, we're thinking that there's possibility to try and get some more statistics about what searches are being made out of the AW stats, because all the information for that is logged in the current web file log. Maybe there needs to be the ability for users to turn on more sophisticated statistics, like inserting Google Analytics on the bottom of their page for them. What would you like to see?
Yeah, and just to throw out some more ideas, we can give you statistics on who's creating records, because we can tell by looking at the initials. We have created date, we have created by. So instead of just telling you, 15 records were created in January, we can say Mary created 4 records, Sue created 3 records, etc. And we can really start giving you more information. We already keep that, so it's just a matter of doing reporting. In addition, in terms of update history, right now our update history is just a text field with a bunch of dates all listed one after another. But it would be really simple instead to start keeping a better history of our update dates that actually includes who did the full update, and have the ability to go back in the past and say, who performed how many record updates in a given period of time, or more accurate picture over time, because I do know some of our members are approached to provide statistics about how often are you updating records, and because we're not dividing it out at the moment, but we could, it's difficult to provide that kind of report. People just don't have the tools to do that, but we need to know what you want to know. So at this point, now that we've thrown all this out at you, I'm wondering whether anyone has anything that they can share with us about what kind of reporting would be useful, what kind of information you want to keep. If your funders ask for anything in particular that we can help you to provide, just let us know. We can unmute you if you ask, or you can type your question, whichever you would feel more comfortable with. Anything?
Gee, can you hear me, Kate?
I can, absolutely, Anita.
Oh, there. Okay, I wasn't sure if Laura had unmuted me. It's Barb again. I had a couple questions. The 404 errors.
Yes.
That you showed us. Okay. How would someone get to see those? Do they have to go into the report to see them?
Yeah.
Or
that web stats tool, we've given a login to that to the technical contact for every database. And only that person gets that login information. So it's something that not everyone would have access to. In fact, I'm certain that some people don't even know about this tool because the information has never been passed on to them. But because we only give one login per database. Now, that said, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Kate. So my question would be, as an enhancement, is it possible, because otherwise I wouldn't know unless I went to that report to find out that I had 404 errors in my records. So is it possible to set up some sort of, I don't know, email alert every time one is recorded and that goes to that super user or whoever it's assigned to? Would that be a possible enhancement?
We get, let me tell you that we get emails every time 500 errors are logged, or once an hour. You don't want to get emails. It would be your personal nightmare. There are thousands and thousands of them.
But it would only be for my own records, though.
No, there's thousands and thousands of them for you. Because we get robots and things asking for things that don't exist that are totally irrelevant. So it would drive you bonkers. You would quickly change your mind.
It doesn't, there's nothing that's crawling your site and seeing that, oh, this link that you've provided to an organization it doesn't go anywhere. These 404s are about...
No, I want to clarify, because I said that and I want to explain why. So sometimes, because I check these logs at least once a month-ish. Not necessarily everybody's, but I do crawl through for major issues. And what will often happen is anyone who's created a link in their description probably has run into, if you don't put http:// it tries to look for the link in your CIOC site. And that's when we get to 404. Okay? Because it's trying to find another person's site on our site. And that's when we get that 404 error. So it's not like a link checker. If that's what you need it for, you should be doing something else. But it certainly does flag to us where there's a glaring error. And the same thing happens with email, where people forget to type mail to when they're creating a link, and therefore it will just have the email address with no mail to. People will click on it, and it will generate a 404 error. So it's only under very particular circumstances it can do it, but I do think once every month or 2 months that it's a really good idea for someone to go in and look at it, because if you're getting thousands on the same page, somebody somewhere has made a mistake. And it's often things like someone set up a design template and has linked to logos that don't exist, or really totally out there wrong things. It's certainly not something you have to monitor with any frequency, and if you're looking for something like a link checker, there's better ways to do it than this way.
Okay. Okay. Then I had a question about, I think, query parameters that you had talked about.
Yes.
Can you go back to that?
Okay, absolutely. I'll explain what query parameters are. Can I step back and sort of give you a better explanation of? Okay. So what happens when you make a request on the internet from a form, for example, is that they take everything that you type into that form and they send it to the page that you're about to view in what we call query parameters. And that's comprised of what we call a key value pair. So search terms would be my key, S terms, and then it says equals, and then it would have my value part of the key value pair, which would be the actual search terms that I typed in. So that's what our query string is comprised of, a bunch of key value pairs where the key says, search terms or community or any quick list parameter or anything like that, and then the actual values that the person who filled out the form has entered. But it's not
so
very
is there a
to read.
is there a report that shows us that, so then we can begin to see that maybe there's certain keywords that aren't in our records that people seem to be using to search?
Right, so that's exactly where we're thinking that that type of thing comes in useful to you. So it's very difficult for us to tie in and say whether or not people found what they were looking for, because although we have a record of the fact that people performed a certain search, we don't have a record of whether it returned any results.
Okay.
That's where we have a disconnect, right, between we can tell that someone performed search A, but we don't know if search A actually gave them anything, because they're not connected. We can certainly tell how frequently you might be getting, there's, as I said, we're reluctant to add extra stats that we track. And so anything where we're recording, the searches people are performing and what they got for results would blow up quickly.
But don't we want to But don't we want to be able to see the ones that didn't work? So then we can work on that?
Even then, it gets challenging.
We might be able to tease things out somewhat. I have some thoughts of how we would be able to manage that.
So there you go. Chris can potentially look at the web logs and see if he can make some educated guesses.
There's a couple of things we can do. If we see from one particular IP address that they had a search and then they went to a record, we can parse that out. We can see they went to a record after that. That doesn't tell us whether that was a good result for them or anything, but it does tell them that they went somewhere directly after.
That they clicked on a record after performing a search. So what Chris is saying is that, and this will be complex, not impossible, that we can potentially look for cases where someone performed a search but then never clicked on a record after that. Meaning the next thing that they did wasn't looking for a record or actually viewing a record. So that tells you I didn't
because
search.
it wasn't anything to look for. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I just going to think of,
If they go
sorry
back,
guys.
If they go back to the search page, that also might mean they got too many results and they went to go and refine their search parameters to narrow it down.
Right. But we can potentially
okay.
we can try and get some of that information out. That gets it gets a little tricky because you have to decide when you think, what pattern of behavior you think indicates a problem. So we can, for instance, say the statistics on when someone did a search and then immediately did another search. So they didn't get what they wanted out of their first search and they tried again. We can potentially get stats on that. We can potentially get stats on somebody did a search and then the next page that they went to wasn't a record. So we're assuming that the search that they didn't produce what they needed. Now, that gets misleading only because for staff, they might be refining their search. They might be picking some of the records and then doing, sending it to bulk tools or sending it to email update requests or doing other things. Or
they know what that record is. They say, oh yeah, I know that one, or they have in their display options already the phone number. Or
so it's tricky and it can be misleading. So it's a challenge.
Okay, and a couple other suggestions. When you were showing us that page that shows the hits and the visits and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you were talking about a hit means this, a hit means, a page means that. Is that defined somewhere for all of us so that we can talk to our funders or someone is educationally that this is what this number really means? Yeah.
So
is there somewhere definitions for those things?
On the software, one of the options is give us tooltips for what things mean.
So just put your mouse over it.
Okay.
And it'll
okay, so
explain
there is something there. Okay, and then my other question was on there was visitor hits, and you talked about time spent, and then you were talking a lot about the Google bots and all that kind of stuff. Can we look at who the visitors were for that, for the time? Does that show the visitors versus?
That's not something that's explicitly.
Yeah, there. I think you just went by it. Yeah.
What's the time spent?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, it doesn't actually tie that stuff together. That's a pre-canned portion of this statistics package. That's not to say that that's not something that could be teased out.
So what would you be looking at exactly?
Okay.
You're trying to tie what things together?
How long the average individual would spend on the site? Because this says that 59% of people who go on a site are gone in 30 seconds or less.
Right.
Yeah.
But that just means they found, generally speaking, that's not a bad thing. For most people, that means that they did a search on Google, it linked to one of your records, they looked at it, they got what they needed, and that was it. It was over. So if they view a single page and they find what they need, it's going to be the 0 to 30 second window because it only takes them about a few milliseconds to load a single page. So that shouldn't be misconstrued as a bad number. It's an interesting number, and it's part of why we often tell people, and they don't believe us, that most of your traffic is people who search on Google, come to your site, get the one thing they need, and leave. And the reason we know that is we have these statistics behind us to say that this is what people do. In my opinion, that's not bad.
But we don't really know if, I'm sorry, Kate, but we don't really know if these are people or Google bots.
No, we do.
These are so the software itself has a very extensive mechanism for determining what are real people versus bots.
Much, much better than what we have built into CIOC. So the way that this software, our web stat software, can determine whether something is a robot or a person is much, much, much more sophisticated and smarter and comprehensive than what we do. CIOC does it ourselves. And this, when they give you these stats, they pre-prune, in most of the areas, they pre-prune out all of the what they call not viewed traffic, meaning all of the non-human beings. So when you're looking at this stat, you're looking at the human beings for the most part.
Okay.
I mean, relatively
okay. I was worried. I was worried before that we weren't, and that's why I was saying, is that something we can improve on?
Well,
okay.
One of the things from this discussion, I would say one of the things that we should look at improving is whether we support people, even though we don't write the software, we do have some capability to adjust it, let's say. And I think it's missing a lot of clarity on what you're looking at in a number of places. Like, it doesn't say that this excludes search engine traffic, so how would the average person looking at it understand that? So I would say a big thing to come back to on this is we need more clarity here to explain to someone who doesn't know that when they're coming to this page what is included and what isn't. Because in some places it does include everything, in some cases it doesn't, and we do need to do a better job of making that clear. We know, because we're using this tool all the time, and we've already done the lookup of the documentation to tell us what does what, but unfortunately it's not saying that.
Right.
There are other questions in the question queue,
yeah.
So maybe we can address some of those and come back if you still have, take a few minutes to digest, and we can potentially come back later. The easiest question probably is, how do we access the detailed, web statistics report? Okay. And
what we'll do, Deneen, I think you're the primary contact for your membership. I'm 99% sure that you are. I can certainly confirm that with Laura. And so I'll make sure that we make an effort to resend to all our primary contacts the link to their tools. And also, we can potentially send a general alert to the membership to remind them that this tool is available. And in some cases where we have multiple members in the same database, we have actually come up in negotiation with the board. We've come up with a fee for adding new sort of subsets for people who share a database, so that they can each get their own stats. So, for instance, in the case of the Central East database, Perth had us set up their own web stats tools that just gives us stats for the Perth URL. So anyone who accesses the Perth database, the Perth part of the Central East database with the Perth URL, they get their own separated stats that they have access to. Even though they're not the primary member, they can get access to just their own statistics. And that's certainly something we can do for those agencies that are sharing a database. If they have their own website address, which many of them do, you know, in Windsor we have the Chatham-Kent address, the Sarnia-Lambton address, and so on. We can set that up, and it's a one-time, you know, probably an hour of work for us to set that up, and then you have access to it with your own login, and you don't have to worry about the fact that you're not the primary owner of the database in order to get access to your statistics specifically. But they do have to have their own website address for us to separate out their statistics. So number one is we'll make sure that we resend the login information and remind each of our primary contacts for our database where this tool is and how to get access to it. And try and put a general reminder to everyone that the tool exists, and that if they have their own address and they want to have their own web stats tool set up, that we can do that. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right. So we had a note from Anita that she's keen to see the exporting. I know that's been on a few people's lists. Pam Thompson, who I believe is Guelph, am I right? Hopefully, is talking about the stats more broken down into views, record owners, top 50. So let me read your whole. Right. So Pam is covering some of the things we said. We're not telling you what these things are, and so we're recognizing there's a major deficiency in all of our stats tools in telling you what you're looking at. That's one major thing, Pam. Would you agree that that's something we're missing everywhere, basically across the board? We don't have enough explanation about what these statistics mean, information about exactly what you're looking at. Okay. All right. So, and the other part of what you're saying is more breakdown. So with that, what we were talking about in terms of groupings that you could do by agency, by user, and things like that, would that meet your other part of your query where you want to be able to break them down for all of those different things that currently don't allow criteria? We can also look at adding criteria to each one of those reports, since we don't have that now. So I think a combination of making the criteria form available for every single type of those reports and not just the one, and also giving you the ability to do some sub-reporting, so you can break it down by view, or break it down by agency, or break it down by user, or whatever of those is essential to you, in the same way that we allow now in the client tracker. Would that cover where you're going with that, Pam, do you think?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. All right. I'll go to Mike Hodgins, who is Halton. His question is about taxonomy sets, or statement, and is talking specifically about using taxonomy reporting to do reports on gaps and for purposes of social reporting and identifying service gaps, using the taxonomy as a means with which to identify those gaps. So saying people are doing so many searches for records that fall under this category. So I would say, with the caveats that we've given, I think as long as we inform the membership about where the information can be misleading, but that's actually quite a simple addition and doesn't require us adding any more information to our database. So that's certainly what we can do. Now, Mike, how would you see, would you want to be able to enter the taxonomy terms yourself? Would you want to be able to specify ahead of time, I want reporting on these branches, save that as a report, and just be able to run it anytime you need it? Do you have a sense of how you would like to approach that taxonomy reporting? We can unmute you, so if you would like to speak, actually speak, I'm happy to unmute you. You're unmuted. There you go.
Hi there. Can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Oh, good. Wasn't sure if my computer was working correctly. I don't have any particular sense right now of what categories or what branches of the taxonomy you'd like to report on. I think until we kind of do it for a while, we won't have a sense of what things we want to track. So to make things easy to start with, I'm quite happy to enter the taxonomy terms or the codes in order to find out information. I don't think we need to have a fully realized, developed tool to get things rolling. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Would you see something like what I'm envisioning as a sort of a quick solution that would potentially work is if we take our drill down search and you can open it up and have checkboxes next to the terms, and you just check off the various terms that you want to report on? Does that seem reasonable?
That seems like it would work.
You could pick multiple. So you could just say pick all the top level branches if that's what you wanted to, or you could drill down and pick lower level if you wanted to, but we probably only let you pick one level per of a branch, so you couldn't say, well, I guess you could, really, frankly, it wouldn't hurt us at all. If you wanted to summarize at level N and level, NP-100- blah, blah, it wouldn't hurt us to allow you to do that. And that seems like a reasonable way to not make you do a ton of typing, at least to begin with, and then potentially in the future have a way for you, once you've done that, to save that report and come back to it later without having to redo that every time. Does that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, just imagine, for example, if I wanted to look up all of the library services requests in the database for a given time frame. Right now, knowing that there's 4 libraries in Halton, I'd have to go to each of those 4 records and individually count them up. wouldn't it be nice if I'm not, I don't know if there is a taxonomy code explicitly for library services, I'm making this up, but imagine if I could search on the category or the taxonomy code that all those 4 things had been indexed by, so I could get pretty quickly information. I'll give an example. I did a search, we did some social reporting on the differences between the 4th quarter of this year, it's still in progress, and the 4th quarter of last year to see if there was more requests for information about job finding, about employment programs. Doing it with our current setup made it pretty difficult. If we could search by category, it would be a heck of a lot easier and give better results, I think.
Right.
So to some extent, so are you doing it by going through and doing a regular search for the records that are possible and then pushing that through into generate a stats? Is that how you're doing it right now?
Because I mean, you can get that now, but you have to do it one code at a time, and I think it's probably much preferable to be able to do that for whole groups and have multiple codes. And I think the key part of this is that it has to include all of the other criteria for doing stats that we already have. Like, it can't be just the taxonomy. It has to include those other things like the date range and so on, that and potentially the groupings and all the other things that we're saying are critical to properly breaking this information down. Is that, that's true?
I agree. Yes, I think so.
Okay. Anyone else, before we move on from taxonomy, is there anyone else who had a comment about the taxonomy reporting specifically? Okay, we do have another one. Okay, so Kelly Talcley is specifically asking about why would you need to search on taxonomy terms. I think Mike did a pretty good job of addressing that, so maybe you already know, but he's basically saying it's a way for them to identify classes of service and how frequently those services are being accessed and really how that changes over time. So let's say if he's taking library services as an example, if you could take a report where you could say, show me library services and how that changes from month to month, where I could, in one look, say in September they were accessed 100, in October it was accessed 500, and so on, and not have to do the extra work of first searching October, then searching November, then searching December, but actually having that presented to you, say, in a quick graph with one search. Okay, good. So I think that explained it. Excellent. Thank you. All right. I think we've cleared the queue. Is there anyone else who has any questions, suggestions? If you don't want to type, I'm happy to unmute you. Just raise your hand or let me know in the questions that you'd like to talk. Is there any, do people feel that doing any enhancements on the data management side is useful? I know it's been asked for in the past mainly because of 211 and other funders saying that they want reports on particular kinds of data management activities, and that's really been the driver behind even considering these kinds of tools. But if we have a sense from anyone of whether this is, you know, a higher, low priority, or you know, what types of things you would like to get out. I never saw the actual requests that came behind the plea for, you know, being able to get these stats out. So I don't have a good understanding of exactly the kind of information or reports they were asking for. So. Okay, well, I sort of open floor, so if nobody else has any questions, then probably what we'll do is we'll post stuff. We'll give people time to digest. Hopefully, if there are other people who weren't able to attend that can review what we've gone through, and really at any time we can follow up and try and come up with additional comments, questions, ideas, and so on. So it doesn't end here. If we do have more questions or comments. Okay, well.
Okay, should we ask one more time? Anita, you okay? Claudette, Diane, Helen, Kelly, Lillian, you're there someplace. Mike, Pam, Sarah? Last chance? Well, actually, it's not. It's never a last chance. Certainly, if you think of something afterwards, as Kate said, please let us know.
Kelly's asking about the rating. So we will post. What we're going to do is update the slides that Chris was using today to try and update with anything we discussed today, and we'll continue to keep adding to that as hopefully we'll get more comments over time. At the end of all of our consultations, we'll be taking the full list from each of the areas that we're discussing, and then each of the members will have an opportunity to do some prioritization work. But that's really something that will happen at the end, and it will really be a comparison between all of the changes that we're talking about, and it will also come along with some idea of the cost and effort behind each of those changes, because really that can have a tremendous influence on whether something is a good choice or a bad choice. If it's something that only a few people want and it's really expensive and takes a lot of time, then it's not likely to be something we would want to choose. But if it's something that's really quick and simple, then even if it's sort of a moderate priority, it's more likely to get chosen because it really doesn't have a major impact on the project. So we definitely will be looking at priorities, but the final prioritizing won't happen until we've really been through all the sessions.
Yeah, and we're talking March and April here, right? Before people start to see those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have further comments or questions, you can direct those at us directly, at Laura, at a member of the development committee, at a board member.
Yep. So there's a PDF that Laura linked to in the invitation that went out today that is an explanation about each of these sections and how they work, and it includes 3 contact emails, Chris and myself being one, Laura being one, and Liz Gallagher, the committee chair, being the third. And you're welcome to send to any of us any comments that you have, and we would then try and respond to that if it's something that needs a response, or add it to our list if it's a wish list item, whatever the case may be. And there's not a timeline on this. So it's not, oh, if you don't have your comments to me by Friday, that's the end. This is an ongoing process, and it will be until we get to the stage of completing all the consultations. So you really do have an open window in which to think about this and make further comments.
Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Kate and Chris, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Laura, for looking after everything for us behind the scenes. And thank you, CIOC members, for joining us this afternoon for this consultation. Okay, happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, question? Sorry, there's a question. Oh, it's good. Okay,
Oh, there was a question?
All right, we're good. We're good.
We're okay?
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, good. People are going off. So we're all set, Laura?
Looks like we're good.
Laura, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay.